So Blizzard has finally listened to us and redone static overload. And there's also one other change, but I'll talk about in a second. Static overload right now, what it does on live is every time you cast Chain Lightning, there's a 10% chance that it'll cause an overload on every single target. Now, that effect is tied to Stormkeeper. So the first response to this I've seen is everyone's like, oh my god, why would they nerf us? And I can kind of understand that response, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that I don't really think it's a nerf. Okay, so think of it this way. In raids, you pretty much always, you aren't really consistently AoEing. Like, this is probably going to be a net loss in Mythic Plus, but in raids, it's probably always going to be a good thing, at least mostly. Because think of, like, Tomb of Sargeras, there's only one boss, this would probably be a loss on Mythic, and that's the Desolate Host. If even that, because a lot of times there's only, like, 3 targets, unless you're in the living room for some reason. Think of it like Harjatan. Add spawn every 30 seconds, use Stormkeeper in every other one. They only last about 5 to 10 seconds, and so you weren't really casting that many Chain Lightnings. So having a guaranteed static overload every time you cast Stormkeeper right when you want it would be a really good thing, and probably is actually a DPS increase over the current iteration of static overload. Probably, at least. We haven't really done enough calculations to say this for sure, but I'm pretty certain it's probably going to be a net increase on most situations. Of course, it is a little weaker in consistent AoE, and it's going to make Chain Lightning kind of overall a little underwhelming. And there's a couple things they could do to change this. They could either just flat out buff Chain Lightning, or my favorite solution is they could remove or reduce the overload, or the mastery modifier on Chain Lightning. Because right now, if you don't know, Chain Lightning actually has 1/3 the normal chance to overload, but it rerolls the chance on every single target. That's kind of how, like, if you happen to roll the chance and it overloads every target, that's what a static overload is. It's a very low chance to happen because, let's say you have 100% mastery, it's a 33% chance for it to overload. So it's kind of small. So my suggestion is if they just make that only 1/2 or something, it'd be solving 2 problems at once, because right now our mastery is also really bad for AoE. So suddenly mastery becomes more desirable for AoE, and suddenly Chain Lightning is not only better, not really just underwhelming, it's also more satisfying to push the button. So it's kind of a win-win-win there. And so I guess I kind of have maybe an unpopular opinion on this, but I actually love this change. I think it's a massive leap in the right direction of consistency, because think about it. Ellie's biggest problem is that we can't consistently do anything when it comes to AoE. Like, we burst AoE, maybe. We have about a 40% chance when we push the Stormkeeper button to burst AoE. So this is actually a really huge jump in the right direction on that. As long as it's tuned right, this could be a really, really good thing. Especially depending on, I don't know how the fights are in Argus, but burst AoE is going to be a huge specialty of ours. Now the other change is they brought Earthquake from 600% to 552% spell power. It is a slight nerf, but keep in mind, on live right now, Earthquake is 465%. So it's actually still a pretty big buff. I did the calculations here, and it's about a 16% buff still from live, even after the nerf. And that is not including the 6% aura that's also going into effect, so it's Earthquake's still going to do significantly more damage. And everything except for Chain Lightning is also going to be doing significantly more damage, and Static Overload will also be doing significantly more damage because of the mastery change. So overall, these are good changes. Keep that in mind. Trying to be too upset about it. Like, it's definitely, we're still looking for more single target. Absolutely, but this is not a bad change, and it's something that we've been wanting for a very long time. One interesting little thing that I actually discovered when I was messing around with this is that, well, first let me show you how it works. A little laggy in the PTR. You cast Stormkeeper, and then you get a 15-second long buff called Static Overload. Basically, it says Static Overload is going to happen. You don't have to cast Static Overload first. You can cast Lightning Bolt. You don't even have to cast Static Overload in the Stormkeeper. You can wait until the end and then do it if you really, for some reason, don't want to do a whole lot of damage. But that's how that works. One little weird thing that I figured out, I did some calculations, and it looks like, right now, that unless you have either Power the Maelstrom active, or, what like 75% mastery. I think it was 75%. Ish, about 75%, you will actually be using that static overload proc on a single target with the Stormkeeper. So like you pop Stormkeeper, and for the last charge or something, if you don't have any more Lava Burst, no more chances to proc Power the Maelstrom, you'll just use it on Chain Lightning, even on single target. Because Chain Lightning doesn't really do that much less damage than Lightning Bolt right now, because Lightning Bolt just kind of does no damage. Like, this thing is kind of sad. 427k crit. Pretty sad at 932 eye level. But yep, that's the little weird thing about that. Just to satisfy everyone, have to do it. The PTR is way too laggy to do anything. But I also want to mention that we actually don't know if they have changed the mastery modifier yet. We haven't been able to get anyone to do the testing yet. We'll report back when knowledge is found, but the biggest reason we don't know is that it's not actually a documented thing. So if they changed it, we wouldn't necessarily know it was changed. We were under the impression it was 1/5 the chance to overload from what someone said in alpha, until we just did the testing and discovered it was actually 1/3. But yeah, hopefully this could be a really, really good thing. Keep that in mind. I saw a lot of people really upset about the changes. I just kind of wanted to make this to show everyone that hasn't seen the changes yet what they are, and to remind everybody that this isn't a bad thing. It's not all of what we wanted, for sure, but it's not a bad thing either, so keep your heads up, and I will keep you guys posted if anything else happens.